Hey everyone, welcome back to the live Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clemens. This is our weekly talk show where we talk all about customer support, customer service, basically all the things that we do every single day in our jobs, which is making customers happy. This week is going to be really, really exciting. First, because we've got everyone finally back together, so all four of us are in the same hangout. I was going to say room, but we're not in the same room, really. But we're all here. And two, we're talking about Carolyn's article that she wrote about scaling support over at Buffer, which is just really fascinating because we've got some pretty diametric views going on with this one. So I think it's going to be fun. But until then, let's go ahead and introduce the rest of the panel. First, we'll start with Carolyn, since this is going to be kind of her article highlight this week. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm very well, thank you.
And then we got Chase Livingston, who is in a new space. That's why the background looks a little bit different, but he's still as awesome as ever. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be here.
And then Jeff Vincent, who has warned us he may drop in and out depending on some tornado or something in his life. So that's that. How are you, Jeff?
I am just super interested in that Chase Livingston new space.
I know.
It accentuates the beard quite nicely, and I just want to know what's going on.
It's actually a new co-working space that I'm working out of now, so just happened to be here this evening because I have somewhere else to be right after this, so hanging out here tonight.
Nice.
Exciting.
It's kind of reminiscent of like a basement of a building. If you're not watching the YouTube, if you're listening to this on the podcast, he's kind of like in the basement of a building, and it looks like he's gonna whip out like a guitar at any moment and just start playing.
If only that were the case.
If only, you're telling me.
Oh, so let's talk scaling support at Buffer. I'm so excited about this one. This is one of those topics that we kept shifting around in our schedule to make sure that all of us were here, especially Carolyn, because we wanted to let her defend herself, I guess, in some ways, rather than be like, oh, this is what Carolyn meant when she wrote this. So if you haven't, we've put the article in the show notes. That way you'll have it there so you can be able to see it and read it and that kind of thing if you haven't already. Basically, it kind of revolves around the idea that, well, I'll tell you what, let's just let Carolyn explain. So Carolyn, explain in a kind of a nutshell why Buffer chooses not to scale support.
Okay. So the article boils down to a super oversimplified model of there being only two options, which are either customers find the answer themselves on your help docs, which is you scaling support, or they write in every time they have a question, which is not scaling support. And admittedly, there's a whole lot of space in between. But on the two extremes, we prefer the latter, and that is because we believe we learn more and faster when we have to sort of answer the question 15 times, then we will ask our designers and our developers if this is something that they can make clear in the product itself. And the concept is that if 50 people go and find the answer themselves, you'll never know that those 50 people had the question, and then the next 500 will still have to have the same question and go find the answer themselves, whereas if you answer it 50 times over email, then you can fix it, and then the next 500 don't have the question.
And just so I can make sure that like I've got the flow in my mind. So somebody writes into you, there's 15 customers that all are like, oh my gosh, I can't find like the password reset link in Buffer. How do I reset my password? Then you would answer it each time and have your one of your designers or programmers or something come up with some solution for that. So how long typically between, this same question coming in over and over and that question getting fixed? Like how many, is it like days that we're talking about? Is it weeks or months? Like how long's the time frame in between that and the fix?
It can be days, it can be months. On the simple ones, like if we launch something that the button just isn't clear, that's usually a really quick fix. So I have a meeting with the product head every week, and I tell him, based on what my people report to me, these are the areas of confusion. If the button says, I'm trying to come up with a simple example. If the button says a confusing word and we can just change the copy, that's a day. That's an hour. one of the ones that's a little harder that is an example of this system not really working is our scheduling. So we have several different concepts for scheduling. You can sort of add it to your buffer, or you can custom schedule it with a specific date and time. And you could have multiple schedules, and each profile has a different schedule, and that is an area that has consistently proven to be confusing, and yet we haven't done it because we haven't rewritten the entire app. So yeah, it depends a little bit. It's the good news is that they are very open to the longer term projects as well, and I think about them and are quite serious about tackling those too. But yeah, then it can be months.
Yeah, and so going from the buffer approach here into kind of a good middle of the line kind of thing, we've got Automatic with their WordPress knowledge base that's pretty extensive, but they do offer the live chat tool as well. So, Jason, so what do you think about this idea of not scaling support through the KB, but growing those relationships? Is that something that you're on the live chat squad at Automatic? Is that something that makes you excited? Like, do you want to talk to more people on live chat with the same question 15 times?
We don't have enough manpower to do that, I don't think. I'm not sure it would scale for us because we have, as everybody knows, a pretty extensive FAQ and things like that, and we still answer, the same question about all those articles, 15 times at least. So even with all the help docs and stuff we have, we still have basically more inquiries and questions than we can handle, and we're still, hiring tons and tons of people to try to get back to all those users. So for us, I'm not sure. I think the scale is just too large to be able to do something like that.
And then moving a little bit farther on that spectrum that Carolyn talked about, we've got Jeff with the Wistia team, who Wistia's hardcore, like, let's get the help docs right. Let's get the knowledge base right. Let's let the customer go and search those. That's where we want them to go. Jeff, I think back to your user conf talk where you were talking about, hey, we haven't had to hire as many support people because the docs were so good. Is that a fair assessment? So Wistia is kind of basically on the other end of the spectrum here?
I think I would have... Can you guys hear the thunder or no? Can you hear it? Okay,
don't get blown away. You'll be fine.
I put the headphones on purpose, but I guess you can still hear it. We're in the middle of a downpour here. And Sherman's super scared of thunder, so sorry. At the beginning of the episode, I probably would have said we're on the other end of a spectrum, but I think now Carolyn kind of made the caveat that her article, of course, was like a drastic oversimplification of the total continuum. And so as a result, like I don't think we're on the total other side. I think MailChimp is even another step closer to full automation, which is you have to do a search before you can contact us. And I know that like what they're pushing towards is like we're even going to try to be smart about your searches. So if you search for something that's if you're searching for something that we think this resource might be helpful, we'll still give you that even if it isn't exactly what you searched for. So I wouldn't say that we're on the complete other side of the spectrum, but I would say that we certainly err more towards the idea of if we're going to have documentation, it might as well be the best documentation that we can possibly have. And that, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we can unpack on there. I'm not sure which one to tackle first, but I think that just from a sort of an approach standpoint, one thing that Carolyn said that stuck out to me is that she meets with the product person every week and is like, here are some problems that people are having. One thing that we believe very strongly one thing that we would identify as sort of not the way that Wistia works in terms of that is that the person who feels the most pain, which is like Carolyn or Asa or Colin, I'm just thinking of all the people that I know on the help team at Buffer, that they would be as empowered as humanly possible to fix the problems, the pain that they were experiencing. And anytime that we can't fix that, we ask why not, and we try to make that a possibility. So yeah, I won't go into everything that I'm thinking right now, but I would say that we're a bit further along the try to make your resources better workflow than Buffer, which is probably more of a let's focus on really feeling the pain and then making the changes to alleviate the pain.
Yeah, and that was one of those where so when Carolyn was talking earlier, the two big things that come out of it are kind of the things where I want to take this conversation. The first being the one that you've already talked. So being able to say to your product head, hey, look, this sucks. This is causing confusion. This is just really bad. We've got to get this changed. So Carolyn, for people that, for teams that aren't meeting with their product head once a week and kind of, you sound like you've got like this already established channel to your product lead right there, and it's kind of like a natural thing. Like it happens week after week, and it's just kind of set. So for people that don't have that yet, how would you recommend they go about getting their product lead to listen to them when it comes to these kind of customer sticky points?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I have a somewhat magical setup as a team lead for support. I have a lot of support from the product team and the engineering team who are very keen to hear what our team has to say, and they have sort of the freedom and the bandwidth to actually make changes as opposed to we build products, we don't fix bugs, which I know some teams deal with a little bit. So if you're in that situation, I think that in my experience, numbers is the thing that tends to have the greatest impact on these conversations. So we use a very manual system of tagging in Help Scout, where we tag every single question with a product area. And then we say, hey, 25% of the people who wrote in had a question about billing. Like, we really have to talk about billing. And, you can say, 3,000 customers, or we had 3,000 conversations about, this, that, or the other. And if the pain of the customer isn't motivating enough, then you can use the fact that you're having to pay support people to answer that many questions, and that's a number that works really well too. If just the sheer number of customers isn't motivating enough, you can sometimes translate that pretty easily into salary and cost for the company. So yeah, I would recommend some sort of numbers there, and the best way we found to do that is very manual. I don't know if maybe anybody else has a better system for sort of recognizing which area problems fall into, but we do it by hand each time. Challenge cake, yes.
This is not a challenge cake. I just didn't want to talk over Chase, but I do feel like what you just said for a support manager, there's a bit of a double-edged sword there, right? Which is you quote the number of times that issue, someone wrote in about that issue, and the number of times that someone, either you or someone on your team, had to handle that issue. But that also means that the people on your team had to handle that issue again. So that also means that if the change doesn't get made, they start to lose confidence. If it doesn't get made on the timeline that they would have expected. I'm thinking of a particular issue that we have where I would say we're leaving potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table in terms of the way that we have a manual process in place that is not as good as an automated process would be in terms of collecting revenue. And it is very disheartening for people on my team to feel like, so that's still not rising to the level of priority of something else, which I don't, because of what I'm working on in my role, I don't necessarily fully understand why that's a problem, right? And it's like, if they don't have the full visibility into all of the company issues, which is part of your job, is to be like, yeah, I'm aware of those issues, but you don't necessarily have to worry about those right now. You will probably at some point, but that's how we spend our time. Then they can, to me, or at least in my experience, there's the issue of people becoming disheartened because it's like, well, I raised the flag and I clearly spent a ton of time on this issue and it still didn't get fixed. How do I feel now? I don't know. I just wanted to throw a challenge cake in there because I think that is one, for people who are listening, that is one thing that could be a problem if they don't have your Utopia experience.
Yeah, and I think I have a little bit Utopia in that sense too, because we have full visibility into what the engineers are working on. We get all the emails, we see all the discussions, we see the notes from the meetings, We know everything that's in Trello. So I would agree, we do have a pretty good sense of all the challenges, which is part of the reason they're understanding when they have to answer the same question 50 times, and then another 50 times, and another 50 times. But I totally agree that can be difficult. And in some cases, we do have some "I told you so" moments, right? Like, that's unavoidable when we're like, "This is a really big issue. Hello, excuse me, this is a really big issue. Hello," and then like it turns into a really big issue, and then we're like, "Oh, should have listened." But we also, those are pretty few and far between, and often sometimes I overreact to an issue that I think is going to be huge, and then it turns out customers aren't actually that bothered by it. So I'm wrong sometimes, and sometimes we wish that they had to listen to us more, and it's totally fine both ways because we learn a lot. But yeah, that has happened. But luckily, our product manager Brian really does try his best to listen to me when I say this is a number one priority, and when he chooses not to, it's for a good reason, and I trust him to do that. But again, that takes trust and a lot of visibility into what they're dealing with too.
I always imagine that Buffer has this utopia set up where the Lego "Everything is Awesome" song is playing like all the time. I'm pretty sure that's how their whole company works. But yeah, so one of the other things I'm curious about here is how customers react to this kind of approach. Because I know, like, for me, whenever I have a problem with an app or something like that, I want to be able to go to a help site and give me a search tool, and I'm going to find what I need. And if I can't find it after 15, 20 minutes, then I'll email from there. So do your customers love that they get this personalized response every time? Well, that's not the right question. Are they fans of having to write in to get info on how to do certain things?
No, not always. And I think we are missing a certain section of people who prefer to communicate a different way. And we just haven't quite figured out how to marry those two worlds yet. But I totally think that what the point you made is a great one, and we're not serving those customers in the best way that they want to be served. So yeah, I would love to hear sort of how to make those work together.
Yeah,
you
Jeff,
have to really commit if you're gonna do a wonderful, beautiful area where you could find the answer, because that's how you like to find the answer. Then we have to commit a huge number of resources to that and sort of abandon our theory here. So I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, so it's one of those. I would throw up a challenge cake, but I have no idea where that is in the Google Plus Hangout menu thing.
That's a real problem that you have.
Yeah, major problems. Let me write into Google Plus and see what they say. I would challenge the idea that it requires a lot of resources, just because you have support apps out there like Help Scout, like Snappy, that do really good jobs. With their help sites, with their knowledge bases. Even User Voice lets you theme it a little bit, and some CS layouts and stuff like that. So I think that the tools are there. You don't have to have a designer work on a help site for 3 months like we did with Basecamp. So I would say the tools are there. It's not resource intensive. It's just a matter of actually putting in a little bit of work that requires to get those set up. And then keeping those help docs up to date from there forward. Chase Livingston, this is something that with Automatic, massive knowledge base here going on. Do you find customers generally tend to skip over that when they hit the live chat? Do you find customers are just like, the live chat option was here, I'm just going to ask you rather than go find it for myself?
Yeah, I think that does happen a lot, which is expected, obviously, because the customers who are seeing live chat, most of them have it presented to them right in their, WordPress.com dashboard, which is where they spend most of their time working on their sites and things like that. So we kind of expect that they're going to skip over, searching and just come right to live chat. But oftentimes, if their question is one that's already answered in the help site or something like that, we'll, let them know, hey, thanks for getting in touch with us. We actually have a great article and with screenshots and everything already written up over at, and then send them the link to whatever help article will help them out. And then if they have further questions or need more details or things like that, we can go from there. But I would say probably the majority of the time, just sending them the link to that help doc, gets them on their way.
Yes, okay, so that's something I want to push a little bit. So with help docs, you've got options for screenshots, you've got options for text and hyperlinks and everything right there ready to go whenever a customer needs something. So if a customer writes in, and I'm just sticking with the whole reset the password link because that tends to be a basic example. So when a customer writes in and says, hey, I need to know how to reset my password link, you can send them to the password page, or you can send them the help docs for that kind of thing. Like for me, that just seems a little faster than having to write out an email, even if I'm using Text Expander here, but write out an email, throw some screenshots in that I either have to take then or I've taken them beforehand and have them in a folder somewhere. Like it seems a bit more of a overall manual process to answer each email. So Carolyn, is that what happens with your team? It's just more manual with each email that they send out?
Yeah, we do use Text Expander a fair amount for things that are sort of step-by-step instructions, like you'll want to click here, here's a screenshot, here's a link to Cloud App for that. Yeah, we do use sort of a similar concept, which is, have it pre-written so that you don't have to go dig for that resource every time. But obviously, we still write a personalized hello and goodbye, and usually there's more to it than just the step-by-step. So, yeah, it's more manual.
At the end of the day. Yeah, and with the reset the password link, that tends to be a really simplistic one. But I mean, when we're talking like how to do trace routes, that can be really tough. Or how to do, if you've got network problems and you need like a hard report or something like that. That it just helps having step-by-step instructions with screenshots on a page that you can send to somebody and be like, this is exactly what you have to do. I don't know. I guess again, that's just kind of my personal feeling. I mean, I like help sites. I don't know. Yeah. So Jeff, do you, when it comes to, with scaling support at Wistia?
Yeah.
So, are you putting an even split in between the help docs that you're creating as well as answering customer emails and that kind of thing? Like, is there 50% of the time people are working on making the help docs great, and 50% of the time they're taking care of customers? Like, is that the split that happens at Wistia? And I guess a better question here is that a good split? Should it be, people should focus 50% on help sites and 50% on their customers through the different like email channels, social media, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. I have no idea what the answer to that is. For us, it's definitely more helping customers and less updating help docs, right? The majority of time across the team is still spent on immediate emails, but the feeling is that, to Chase Livingston's point, the questions that we are able to handle, we're able to handle because we've gotten rid of a bunch of other questions that people would have preferred to never ask in the first place. I think somebody who was applying for a Wistia support position a couple of years ago, I always try to sell them on the approach, which involves this whole concept of we split time between answering support emails and trying to fix the underlying problem, or at least improve the messaging around it. And they asked me, if we get rid of or if we update our docs and we fix all the problems, like, won't support just be totally like non-existent? Like, won't we just have to fire all the support people?
Yikes.
And it's like, yeah, no, they did not get a job. But it's like it never ends, right? Like, support, we have this feeling like support only happens when there's a problem. But what if all our support people were doing was helping our current customers get even more out of our products? Or what if the people on the customer happiness team at Wistia had nothing to do, And so what they were doing was they were creating great culture videos. They were reaching out to our customers and saying, like, what are the things you do right before you log into Wistia, and what are the things you do right after you log out of Wistia? And then they were bringing that feedback back to our product. I don't want to say our product team because we don't really have one, but like our product brain dump, and saying, like, here's what we could be doing next for our customers, right? There's like a never-ending. I mean, first of all, that's another black and white thing that will never happen. Support will never go away. There will always be some sort of problem in something that we build. But it's interesting to think about if all the things that shouldn't be support requests weren't, we would have more time to help more customers at better depth instead of the sort of transactional nature. This is my rant against Text Expander, but the sort of transactional nature that those tools create, which is I would jump in and sort of modify this answer a little bit, but I really got to get to my next email. Like I just am gonna send this one. Like whatever, I'll ask a better question in the next one. And instead, my own personal inclination is how can we eliminate the need for that question so that the ones that actually do have to happen we can go in more depth on, and we'll even have the ability to be proactive and say, hey, you didn't even really reach out, but I'm just wondering, like, what problem were you running into that you ended up having to reach out, or that you ended up having to use Wistia for, so that we as a support team really just become like a customer solutions team, or like a customer happiness team, if you will. Yeah, that's my approach in a nutshell. I don't even know what the question was that was asked. So
who cares? That was great. That was fantastic. And for everyone that didn't digest, like unpack all the wealth of knowledge that was in that, you need to like rewind this podcast and go back and listen to Jeff's answer again.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those things. So with Wistia's approach, with Automatic's approach, like I can clearly see where they are working to decrease the amount of easy questions, right, that are coming in. That way it frees them up to do more personalized, individualized things with customers, whereas Buffer feels more like we're doing the individualized, customized things at the beginning, but there's no, like, so Carolyn, I guess the question is, what's the next 6 months for Buffer support team? Is it just answering those same emails over and over, and then after you talk to your product head about that, then you switch to like a different set of 15 emails over and over? Like, at what point can you get out of the reactionary, like, put out the fires kind of thing into the, like, help our customers be awesome using Buffer kind of stage?
I'm not sure I hear any difference between what Jeff just said and the whole point of my article, which is get rid of the easy questions by fixing the problem.
I think that's a fair. Sorry, I really don't mean to cut you off. I just want to tell you that I agree with what you're saying. I think we're both talking about the same end. I think what I probably didn't cover, or what I think that your article actually covers, and it's just to be overly simplistic, right? We talk about black and white, like one or the other, is that is that probably all of us in this chat room and everyone who's listening has had that situation where they're jumping up and down saying, like, this is a problem that must be fixed, and I'm sick of answering this question, or our customers keep getting frustrated, and I hate dealing with frustrated people because it sucks. Everyone's been in that situation, and the less, right, it's selfish on either side, but the less you can be in that situation, the better you feel about your life. That tends to be my approach to the whole thing. Anyway, all I wanted to say was I think that you're right that the goal of both of them is to be more awesome, and one of them is like, let's give you this resource, and the other one is like, let's have more ammo to argue with our teams internally about getting that fixed permanently. Yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry. Please carry on.
Yeah.
Is that a fair distinction?
I don't think so. So yeah, if we get through the top 10 issues and the next 10 issues are as big as the last 10 issues, then we move on to those. Yes. we recently had an experience where we were able to hire fast enough and fix bugs fast enough that they were bored. And it's the first time that it's ever happened. And we hit inbox zero every day for a month, and it was magical, and there were unicorns. And what did they do? They did exactly that. Like, one of them made a video for daily, and some of them have just been jumping on live chat more and some of them have been trying to have video chats with conversations to do some like more in-depth, did I say video chat with conversation? I meant the word customer. To do more in-depth like customer development and, you know, so yeah, they do, like, obviously if there's nothing, if there are not the top 10 pressing problems that people are jumping up and down about, then we don't have to jump up and down. But it's so, yeah, I still don't really think I totally understand the distinction, because they are pushing forward in other ways and trying to improve the experience at Buffer. And we're trying to sort of increase the number of replies per conversation for exactly that reason. Or we're not actually trying to increase it, but we hope that that is a result of a successful effort, which is we're no longer having these like, how do I reset my password? Here you go, press this button. It's like, let's think about social media and why I can, you know, why do I want to send this many per for Twitter versus Facebook, and, you know, like sort of talking about the strategy more, or digging into like some really tricky thing that they did have to contact us about. Like, that's what we should be doing, and that's what our team should be doing. But obviously, like, the top 10 most important things are going to come first. So yeah, I'm afraid I'm misunderstanding a little bit. But the next 6 months will be a combination of those things, like improving the overall experience and doing more outreach. But also, when there's like a top 10 thing, we'll focus on that again. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, with your article, you were mentioning about what's a good way to phrase this? So the example you gave in the article was, how do you change a real life Buffer example was, how do I change my credit card in your system, right? So when you've got that question coming in over and over, which I guess, so back up, is that something that you've kind of fixed yet? Like, do you still get that question 50 times a day?
Never.
Never again. So what change did you make?
Rare.
Right. So what change did you make that took it from, you know, 50 times a day to rarely ever happening? Can you kind of give us like what using that specific example, what happened from when you told your product head, hey, look, this is a problem, to how he fixed it, or how the team fixed it?
Absolutely, yeah. So it is a long process, and it does have a lot of these steps. So when we used to just track every bug, we didn't catch these things, because that question doesn't represent a bug in the system, because you could change your credit card in the system. It was just sort of convoluted as to how you got to it. So what we started to do is tag every single question that came in through Help Scout, and so one of them is billing. And so there happened to be 1 month that especially it was higher than normal, which had caused us to look at where that was in relation to the other tags, and it's consistently in the top 5. So then Orsa, who's sort of our signals guru, started looking through every single email that had been tagged billing and figuring out what the pattern was. And one of the patterns was, I don't know how to change my credit card. So yeah, she reported that to me, I reported that to Brian, and this was a really quick fix. Like, this wasn't one of the ones that required a long-term thing. So he said, oh, here, let me just stick this link in this place where people are looking for it that says change billing details, and then it was over. So yeah, I mean, we do have that kind of thing on our very ghetto last, you know, not given a lot of thought FAQ. But yeah, people write in about it because we don't have a search bar on the FAQ and all these other things, which is neither here nor there. But we do have to have that question enough times to figure out that people have the concern, obviously. And you know, to Jeff's point, like if there's other things that are bigger than that, then we don't notice that that's a big issue because it's not in the top few. And so we're dealing with these other things. And so sometimes these littler ones don't actually bubble to the surface until we fix some of the bigger ones. So to that point, yeah, the next 6 months does look a little bit like the last 6 months, which is just picking the top ones and fixing them regardless of, you know, if it's the top thing that affects 50% of the customers, like maybe last week's did, but this week's it affects 2%, but it's the biggest percentage, so we may as well fix it. Yeah, as soon as it bubbled to the top, we were able to sort of just stick it on his plate and say, like, okay, we've reported the question that it's coming up. We don't try and suggest solutions usually because we're not very good at that. And customers usually ask for a very specific solution, and sometimes that's not the best way to fix the problem after all. So yeah, we send that over the fence to the product team, and who's sort of also the design team, and they just stuck a link on there.
I love that. Just stick a link in there. That's it. At the end of the day. That's all you need. Yeah, that was the big questions I had, at least for Carolyn. Jeff, Chase, anything we're missing on this? Carolyn, was there anything you wanted to point out or clarify, like we just got completely wrong at some point, anything like that? Like, this is the moment. Last thoughts.
No. Some of the comments that I got were really awesome, that they were, why don't you get this information from tracking your help documents? And I was just curious if you guys do that. Do you use any sort of this question was helpful to me, yes, no, or do you track attention to those, or do you learn that, yes, they visited that and then they didn't ask us a question, therefore it must have solved their problem? Do you guys do any sort of tracking like that?
We do. Oh, go ahead, Chase.
Oh, sorry, no, I was just going to say we do both of those things. We use Google Analytics pretty extensively to see what help documents are being viewed and where they come from and the search terms and all that good stuff that it gives you. And we also, to a lesser extent, use the was this helpful thing, but honestly we don't pay that much attention to it. It's more the Google Analytics kind of information and stats that they give us.
Yep, so similar, we look at what the most popular documentation articles were. That tells us everything about what problems most people are having, and then we look at the search terms that people enter on our help site to improve, to make sure our messaging is right, which is something I covered at UserConf. It's like people use different words to describe things, and if they don't enter your word, they may not find your help doc, so that's important too. And then the other thing we do is we do have a little widget that pops up on a help doc that says something like, did you find what you were looking for? And if not, what were you looking for? And we get a ton of feedback through there, and I would say that we don't do a perfect job or the best job of going through all those and making the changes that we should. But the idea is that anybody on our team, if faced with the situation that you described, which is we hit inbox 0, that's pretty cool. What should we do now with the rest of our afternoon? It's we have a very long list of changes that people can hop in. They're very small changes that we can make anytime to improve the overall experience. And it's I guess the other thing I would say is a change to that stuff is so low cost and so low, and so potentially high benefit versus what you described of making a change to a product, which can be very scary, and some companies will be well, we have to go through testing, or we have to get 4 different people to sign off on this. This is a really extensive thing. Are you sure, Carolyn, that we have to make this change? And you're I don't know. Sometimes for us, making that change and seeing how it affects the questions asked can sort of unearth what the underlying question was. It can be super helpful. Right, if people write in and they're I read your doc, I get it, I get what this is. Now here's my question, right? So instead of asking a question about how do the mechanics on this work, now they're I get what the mechanics are, but I still don't actually understand what it is that I'm trying to do. And that is so helpful. The support question, because people don't want to look like a dummy, tends to be focused on the mechanics of something. Whereas sometimes it can be good to know that they didn't even know what it is they're trying to do in the first place. Like me using Buffer, I just click all the buttons.
I'm weeping inside.
It's like me playing a video game. I'm just like, fire everything.
That's
you should
amazing.
see me drive a car.
Can only imagine.
Well, we're referencing each other's apps. I'm curious, is the experience that we just recently had where we got a manual contact, is that the process you're talking about where you're leaving millions, hundreds of whatever dollars you said that could be automated? Because that was really special and wonderful that it was personal. I'm just saying.
So I think what Carolyn's talking about is one of the cool guys on our customer happiness team noticed that Buffer had a video. I think if I remember right, that they had tried out Wistia, decided it wasn't super worth it, and had let their trial expire. And then they had just like a blank video on a screen that they didn't know was just a blank video. And so Dave, who is one of the awesome people on the customer happiness team at Wistia, was like, "Hey, you guys, like I just turned this back on for you, so it's not an ugly black box on your page, but you should think about like." Like buying your account or something, maybe, I don't know. That would be a wonderful thing to do. I think we should do a better job of that. Yeah, that's absolutely something. I mean, you don't get people to buy unless you ask, so that's like a great time to ask somebody, hey, you left a video on your webpage that's no longer working. By the way, you just enter your credit card right here. It's going to be good to go. And then you do like a little smile thing.
There's probably a way to automate that, but it was so magical that it was so personal.
That was 100% personal. That was 100% Dave being like, hey, have you talked to them about this? And me being like, who? And then he like totally took care of it. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
He did. Props to him.
I know. Props to Dave. Dave Cole. You try to steal him, I'll kill you all.
I know. Don't think I didn't think about it.
Except for Livingston. I'm kind of scared of Livingston.
You should be.
That was just really intimidating with his dark background and everything.
Well, like he just kind of leans. You see how he leans in to show a little bit more of the beard whenever he's like trying to be menacing. You see, like that. He's like.
See, and this is why you got to watch the YouTube video sometime, or hang out with us live on the Google Plus Hangouts and see it all in real time.
Yeah, or come visit us.
No, I'm remote. You don't have to come visit me.
Go visit Chase Clemens on the farm.
Oh, so with that, we're going to wrap up. This won't be the last conversation we have about this black and white spectrum that Carolyn has laid out for us, I'm sure, just because it's such a good topic. So we'll come back to it in the future with other questions and things. But for now, it's the best part of the week.
Is it?
It's this week's shout-outs. And I really think that I look forward I look forward to my weekend ending so I can do the shout-out thing and listen to Jeff and his quippy little remark that he's going to put in right before the drum roll. Like, that's the highlight of my Monday right there. It's, gee, what's Jeff going to say? But these are our shout-outs. These are the things that are making us happy, so happy that we want to shout them from the rooftops and mountaintops and all that fun stuff. So, Chase Livingston, we'll start with you. What's your shout-out for this week?
Since we talked a lot about the tools and stuff that we use in the show, I wanted to give a shout-out to Olark, the service we use for live chat, just because I think we've really kind of stress-tested their service a lot because we throw a lot of users at them and things like that, and they've been really great helping us out, getting back to us, fixing things that don't work, and it may not have even been something that was broken. It was just something that really didn't work for us, and we kind of needed them to do it a different way. They've been great about all that. So if you're looking for a live chat solution, definitely give them a shot.
100% agree. Olark is fantastic. And Ben over there, whenever you have a question, just be like, hey, Ben, what's the answer? Although, yeah, he still does support. They do all-hands support. Yeah, you'll still get an answer from the co-founders. Jeff, what's your shout-out for this week?
I hope I didn't already shout this one out. Okay, so here's the tool I always wanted. I read a lot of crap. I also read a lot of good stuff. And I wanted a way while I was reading something to say, like, let me share this with other people, like my audience, right? And so I use Buffer for, let me like tweet out this like little quote, this awesome little quote that I found in this article, but I wanted something that I could do, like if I had an email list, that I could share with them my updates so that people would read, besides my mom, would read my blog posts whenever I publish them. And also I could share all the cool stuff that I read. And GoodBits is that service, goodbits.io. I've been using it a little bit. I know I have one reader in this panel who she reads some of my stuff. Chase, is that right? I have two?
I read it.
I'm the best.
Every week.
Okay. So here's how it works. You're reading something and you're like, this is awesome. So the first thing you do is you share something to Buffer, and then the next thing you do is you click the little GoodBits. It has a Chrome extension just like Buffer, and you type in the description, and then at the end of the week it says like, Jeff, you got to send your newsletter, and you go in and it's all nicely formatted for you, and then you can use MailChimp on the back end to handle your list. And MailChimp is a wonderful product that also deserves a shout out. So yeah, check out GoodBits. I have no idea how they make money because it's free, but it's really working well for me. So. And I guess in the vein of this show, in the vein of this awesome podcast that we do, their support has also been really helpful. And I've emailed them several times being like, here's something that didn't quite line up right, and they've been super responsive. So, woo.
Aww. And I'll make sure to put the link to Jeff's GoodBits newsletter in the show notes so you can sign up for it and get him 3 readers, not just 2, but 3.
Hey, listen, you guys, I really need that third one.
It's a big thing. It's a big deal. Yeah, Carolyn, what do you got for us this week?
Okay, so I kind of already did it, but I have 2, really. So I was honestly going to shout out Dave from Wistia, because that was seriously the most amazing experience. So he was humble when he just told the story, and what he didn't say is that our team decided we're not ready for Wistia yet, so Courtney wrote back to Dave and said, thank you so much, this is so amazing of you. I think it's okay to just let it expire. And he was like, okay, that's cool. Totally understand. Well, just because you used it for that one, I'm just going to make it so that that video works forever. Despite the fact that you chose not to pay because you're not quite at that point yet, which was just magical in every way. And there were like magic fairy dust sprinkling from everywhere. So my team was really inspired by that and really impressed by that, and it started a conversation about some proactive opportunities. So that was shout out number 1. Yay, Dave. And the other one, it's funny, so the service that I always want is to be able to read my Pocket in Kindle. Because I just save everything to Pocket, and then I just go through and either delete it if I don't actually feel like reading it, or I read it, but that's all through sort of like bright screens, and it's really hard to do before bed. So I haven't yet figured out how to achieve that. So if you know, let me know. But Amazon now has a Send to Kindle Chrome extension. So for the really long pieces, I can skip Pocket, and if I know I'm going to want to like spend a little time on it and not necessarily like breeze through like I generally do my Pocket articles, like actually like and maybe do it before bed, like it's a longer form article or something, a long read, then you can send it to Kindle instead, or both, and that's really awesome. So I think that's cool, and I've done it a few times, not every time, but a few times.
I think there is, so the Send to Kindle is amazing. I use it all the time. But I think there is some kind of app that does Pocket to Kindle. I'll look and find it.
Teach me.
I feel like there is.
Teach me.
Because I feel like I ran into that problem too, but then I just put my Kindle down for a while and haven't read it recently.
Yeah.
I'll find it and let you know. For me, tentative shout out. So we're going to have to reevaluate this in 6 months or so, but you all know that I'm huge Community fans. Yahoo, and this weird coincidence, whatever, has bought the rights to the 6th season for Community and is going to produce the next 13 episodes, and it will air on Yahoo Pipes or something? I don't know. Some kind of weird Yahoo stream or something like that. So tentative shout out for Yahoo. Like kudos for picking it up and saving that, and then just don't screw it up. That's all I ask. Not hard. Not hard. Oh, with that,
Wait, don't end. Can I do a second shout out?
What? If you can't save it till next week, yes, you can go ahead.
Chase, you know I come up with the shout outs after the show is like, right, that's why I pause during the drum roll, is in case you ask me to go first for the shout outs. I have to come up with it on the fly.
How sad.
But yet how true. Derek Sivers, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he wrote this awesome article called The Philosophy of Great Customer Service that I read over the weekend and thought was just like so wonderful and brilliant in a way that only he can write it. I highly recommend you go. I mean, it's the URL is super simple. It's sivers.org/cs, which I'm assuming stands for customer service. Or you could just search for Derek Sivers customer service, or Chase will post it in the show notes, I guess. But who looks at show notes, really?
Obviously not you, because every shout out is, have I mentioned this before?
But this article is really, really great. I highly recommend it to anyone listening to us yammering on, especially me yammering on.
I feel like did you not tweet that out or something? Because I read the article because I thought you recommended it, but
I did tweet it out, but nobody follows me except for you, Chase.
And your mom.
And my mom, of course, although my mom does not know how to use Twitter. I get these text messages that are like, I think I just tweeted. I'm like...
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. And with that, yes, okay, so we're done. Yes. This Hangout's in the books. I'll have all of those show notes that everyone loves and everyone reads all the time. I will have those amazing show notes up for you, supportops.co, shortly. Other than that, make sure to let us know what you thought. You know, we're not the only ones that have opinions about Carolyn's article, so you can leave a comment on her blog. I've got the article in the show notes, so you can catch it there. Or you can email us, because all of our email addresses are, again, in the show notes. Those show notes are so super helpful for everything.
Everyone uses Google and searches. I'm going to go back to muted now.
We're going to take next week off because I am in the process of like getting settled in at my new house, along with some vacation time next week. So we'll be back in 2 weeks from now with another great topic about looking at the schedule. Oh, is email the best support channel still out there? So we're going to talk about that a little bit and talk about some chatting channels and Twitter channels and whatever other channels you want. Until we see you then, have an awesome week.